So we were speaking about each of the Four Noble Truths. They have these have four aspects. We saw the four aspects of true suffering, and they were taught to eliminate misconceptions that people had, either ordinary people or like philosophers, with regard to the aggregates, with regard to how suffering arises, and so on. So when it comes to the true suffering, or true suffering refers to the five contaminant aggregates, in essence, there are the conceptions of that, first of all, that the aggregates are permanent, because this is how it appears to our sense consciousnesses. They appear to be static, unchanging. So, and as long as one is grasping at permanence, one would think everything is, one would think things are fine. It's fine the way they are, and there's no need to engage in Dharma practice. And it's a basis for many afflictive emotions as well. You grasp at the permanence of your youth, for example, when you're youthful and you're beautiful, and that becomes a basis for vanity, for pride, for attachments, and then for anger as well, because attachment usually leads to anger. So, because of this conception of permanence, so common, deep-rooted in many ordinary people's minds, the Buddha had to make puberty moment by moment. We can speak about coursing and then death, and we can speak about subtle impermanence, which is the moment-to-moment changing of things in general. Then there's the misconception that the aggregates are happy in nature, that they're comfortable, that they're happy, and that you can find real happiness based on your aggregates. And that, as long as we are materially comfortable and we have a lot of attractive objects and influence and so on, then we will experience happiness. This kind of idea. But Buddha said, no, as long as you have the contaminated aggregates, you will never experience lasting happiness, not based on them. Even if you have celestial aggregates in a celestial realm, because they're subject to death, because based on them, you have to experience results of past karma. And based on them, you will create new karma for future suffering. And then there's the misconception that the five aggregates are pure in nature. And based on this idea that the aggregates are pure in nature, we generate a lot of attachment for our own aggregates and for the aggregates of others. And that can be pure in the sense of, physically pure. That's the main one. That when we get attracted, we generate desire for somebody, and for somebody's body is based just on, the superficial look. And we're not really contemplating what is behind the surface.
What is actually inside the body,
yeah.
What keeps it going.
Yeah.
All this yucky stuff inside, we ignore it.
Yeah. So we don't, exactly, this mind of attraction doesn't analyze what exactly am I attracted to. And if they say I'm attracted to somebody's body, but then when we take the parts in isolation, we see that the parts in isolation are not attractive. The skin is not attractive in itself. The hair is not attractive in itself. The different body parts, if we mentally dissect them, they are not attractive in themselves. The organs, inside organs, definitely are not attractive. And even the body as a whole, taken as a whole, but deprived of consciousness, is not attractive. A corpse is not attractive. Even if it's a corpse of a supermodel, it's not attractive.
Yeah.
Right? So it's really when we just start to analyze a little bit, we see this attachment mind, which so obsesses with beauty, with attraction, with pleasure. It doesn't make much sense. But it's so strong. Still, it's so strong in our mind. So the Buddha, especially for the monastics, especially for the people that at that time, those striving for liberation were mainly monastics. And in today's world, things are changing a bit because maybe lay people have more time to study, to meditate, and so on as well. So maybe in today's world, some lay people are more serious about liberation than some monastics. But especially for those striving for liberation, the Buddha taught very in detailed manner how to meditate on what's called the ugliness of the body. So that is not sort of meant for us to feel even more, because especially sort of in the West, I think, we have all these kind of body complexes and so on. We already have uncomfortable relationship with our body, many of us. So if that meditation would aggravate that, it's not advised to do it. But for somebody who has a healthy ego, or somebody who has a healthy sort of self-worth already, and who's striving not for just the temporary pleasures of samsara, but want the kind of the ultimate happiness, nirvana, they can be meditating on the ugliness of the body without, feeling low, without feeling bad about themselves. They just see, this is the nature of my body, and it's not really something to be attached to, or something to, beat myself on the breast for. It's not as, it's not as attractive as it seems. And with regard to the mind, purity of mind, we see when we meditate, when we observe ourselves, that we have easily, we feel we have afflictive emotions, we have afflictive thoughts, we have sort of mental events which we would not go public with. We would not like go public with, because it would be so, I don't know, shameful, etc., etc. But it's just normal. Everybody, ordinary people, have these shameful thoughts, shameful emotions, etc. So also mentally, on a superficial level, we're not pure. And we see this also when we form relationships and so on. We show our best side. No, we don't show maybe our true colors. We don't show ourselves, with our faults, with our the complete facet of us, because we have many good qualities, but then we have faults as well. But we only show like the good, attractive parts to hook the person, and then eventually we find out about each other, how we work. Just one moment, and then the misconception of self, that we tend to relate to ourselves and to others as if there is this true self, or a real self entity, which we could find apart from the body and mind. And these four aspects of the truth of suffering counteract these four misconceptions. Gidi?
Yeah, just not to ask, please. It's very true what you describe about the body. I agree. I see. But also the most beautiful flower, when you look at it, it's really beautiful, but it rots and it dies and it's coming under the, if you look closer, you know, it's the same thing. So it's good for the practice to look at the body, but brings up, I think, a more broad idea that actually what you see is pretty much two people could see something. One would say this is beautiful, one would say this is ugly. So it's not the subject, not the object, not the subject, it's the object. What you see with your eyes and your interpretation that counts.
Yeah. It's very true, this expression that the beauty is in the beholder of the eye, the beauty is in the beholder of the perceiver. Huh? Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Oh, yeah, it is in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah, not only beauty, everything is actually the processing unit is here.
Yeah.
Well, so many people actually work, dedicate their life to make something beautiful by perception. So they cut the flowers exactly like people want, and then make their face. They make the colors, like designing everything. And in the end of the process, you will think, wow, this is beautiful. But actually, if you fire those people or if they do something else, it will look very much different. It will be everything together, not with colors, not cut, not with angles, not with design, just like nature.
Maybe even more beautiful, just like nature. Yeah. But yeah, so we do a lot of work for things to appear beautiful, and beauty does exist. Beauty does exist, but in the eye of the beholder. So there's nothing wrong, like with seeing things as beautiful, as attractive. But if we don't have the awareness, the Dharma awareness, that things are not beautiful from their own side, inherently beautiful, then we get attached. And then we get disappointed as well, because the perception of beauty disappears. And you think that the object changed. No, but it was the subject that was changing. It was the consciousness changing. You started to think about the object or feeling about the object differently because of habituation or because of interpreting the object in a different way. So it was never there from its own side. It was on the subject side, and that's okay to experience beauty. But the attachment that comes from it, this is the creation of the problem, and the exaggeration also of it. Seeing that you will always perceive it as beautiful in every context, in every circumstance. This also, because it's unrealistic, creates suffering for us. And that we always think that we have to change the external environment for things to appear beautiful, rather than our mind. Also creates a lot of problem. It makes us put all our effort into manipulating the material world instead of trying to transform our consciousness. So there's many more points to mention in the Lamrim about true suffering. I leave them aside for the moment, and we see if we have more time later. Because then one needs to contemplate once one has identified true suffering, and that is the first point. It is the first point because ordinary beings have the tendency to relate to the world in the reverse manner, with the four misconceptions: as permanent, as happy, as pure, and as endowed with the real self, or a truly existent self. When one has meditated on true suffering, there's this kind of sense, okay, I realize something is not right, that this state is unsatisfactory. But what are the causes? Then you will start to wonder about the causes for it. And especially we're talking about within the context of, many lifetimes. Not just this lifetime, because then you would say, okay, the cause for it, easy. I was born, and that's the cause, and it will finish. The solution is I will die.
Mhm.
But when we speak about the context of over many lifetimes, it means that even the higher realms will be characterized by suffering. And then the question, what is the cause of this dissatisfaction, suffering? And if we look for the causes, we will see that, first of all, suffering does not arise randomly. Doesn't arise without causes, and it doesn't arise from discordant causes in a random way. Just as anything else in reality doesn't arise in a random way.
It's always cause and effect, that always, whatever arises, has cause and effect.
Yeah.
That is-
Whatever is a thing has causes. Whatever is produced has causes. And it has its concordant causes.
Mhm.
So if we look around us, every object around us, it has its own concordant causes. We don't create a computer from, without putting it together in the right way with the right material and so on, and with a person who knows how to put it together. We don't create a comfortable, soft sofa from wood. A wooden sofa would be hard, not so comfortable. We don't light fire by, we don't light a candle. First of all, a candle is not made of metal because it won't light. And we don't put water inside because it won't light, etc. So it's just whatever we put our mind on and we analyze where does it come from, we see it arises from a very specific set of causes that have the ability to produce them, that have sort of a natural potential for producing them. So why would happiness and suffering be any different from the rest of the natural world? You think, I will live, sometimes we have maybe with like nihilistic attitude. I can just do whatever I want and live life however I want, and nothing bad will happen. I'm invincible, and I will always, be able to thrive or be happy and so on. So this is sort of when we're not discriminating what are the causes of a happy life and what is the causes of a suffering life. And I think we learn as we age to discriminate, because if we don't learn, for example, from wisdom from wise people who have taught, we don't learn from observing our spirit, we learn from circumstances instead. When we bump our head into the wall enough times, yes, then we learn, attachment actually hurts. Anger is actually also doesn't really help me. Feels like a helper in the beginning, maybe, but in the end, just you see how many problems it's bringing you, so you learn by circumstances the hard way.
But there is also pervasive suffering, right?
Yeah.
It exists all the time.
Yeah.
Maybe not part of cause and effect in the.
Yeah, that's the fourth kind, no?
No, it's
All we say, the pervasive stuff.
it is part of cause and effect. Yeah.
There's also.
That
Yeah,
lies everywhere, actually,
Yeah.
right? It penetrates every aspect
Every aspect of samsara.
of.
Everything that is produced by karma and afflictions is pervaded by suffering.
Mhm,
Is pervaded by being unsatisfactory.
mhm.
So that now we're not talking about feelings anymore. So if we speak about the 3 levels of suffering, you have unpleasant feeling, that's the suffering of suffering. That's what we recognize. That was even animals recognize as suffering. Then we have suffering of change. That refers to samsaric pleasurable feelings. The feelings of pleasure that I get from drinking the tea, or reading a good book, or listening to music, or traveling the world, or having, every sensory pleasure, and even the pleasure that we experience from single point in concentration, if that is coming based on self-grasping, if we have not eliminated self-grasping. Again, that is um, well, that's contaminated happiness. But the sensory pleasures will by themselves turn into suffering the more we engage with them, whereas the pleasure from single point of concentration is a bit more, I'm not entirely clear, doesn't really lead to suffering of suffering. It leads to weariness, a sort of tiredness, and you want something subtler than that level of concentration. But it doesn't lead to suffering of suffering. But it is suffering in nature because it is pervaded by, it is produced by karma and affliction. So it's a form of all-pervasive compounded suffering. And that refers to our aggregates, to our 5 aggregates, because they're produced by karma and afflictions. They're pervaded by suffering. But it refers to our environment as well. Our environment is also suffering in nature. The cup, a beautiful cup, suffering in nature. It's contaminated. So again, it looks very nice, beautiful. It's sort of conducive for good feeling. But if I think this is happiness from its own side, then I'm totally wrong. This is a basis, will become a basis for generating attachment, and then a basis for generating anxiety, because the cup is not permanent. Then a basis of generating anger, because Tom, he wants to take my cup, or something like that. So the process starts. So our environment is also pervaded by being suffering in nature. By meditating on these aspects again and again, one generates a sense of renunciation. And renunciation is not a depressed mind. It is not a mind which says, I don't want happiness. It is a mind which says, I want true happiness. It is the mind of self-compassion, as we talked about. I don't want to suffer anymore. And I don't want to go into deceptive conditions, deceptive modes anymore. I want true happiness. And this I cannot find based on the 5 contaminated agates. So these agates, again, they arise, they have a cause. That's the first aspect. The cause is karma and afflictions. It's not only the genes, it's not only the physical matter and so on, because consciousness has a different nature than body. It has its own substantial continuum. And and then origin is the second aspect, because karma and afflictions produce suffering again and again. they produce lifetime after lifetime after lifetime with contaminated agates. It's strong production, that's the third aspect of the origin, because they strongly produce suffering. So they can strongly produce suffering within a human life, or they can strongly produce suffering in lower rebirth. And then the fourth aspect is about condition, and that's about craving. The mind of craving acts as a condition for activating karma at the time of death. That's why it's singled out as a condition producing suffering. In the 12 links of dependent arising, one has, because of ignorance, one has created karmic formations. These leave imprints in one's consciousness. And then at the time of death, there's the craving. Craving for life, craving for happiness, of dying, and that activates a karmic imprint on our mental continuum, which leads to the craving, and then grasping, which is a heightened form of craving. It helps to mature this karmic imprint, and it leads to the link of existence, which is the fully mature karmic imprints, which will project another lifetime. And then, based on that, you will have another set of 5 agates in the next life. That's called the name and form in the 12 links. Name being the mental agates, and form being the physical agate. And based on that, you then have the sensory sources develop. In a womb birth, they develop gradually. In a spontaneous birth, it's said that we can be born spontaneously in certain realms. In hell realms and in celestial realms, one is born spontaneously. The sense faculties come together all at once. Based on the sense faculties or sources, we have contact between consciousness, sense faculties, and an object, and that produces feeling. And based on feeling, again, we crave, we grasp, and so on. Craving for good feelings, craving to be separated from unpleasant feelings. So craving acts as a condition for producing suffering. Then one does, after having identified the causes of suffering, one wonders, are these causes of suffering permanent, or are they impermanent? Can I remove them, or are they essentially existent? Are they an essential part of my consciousness? So the Buddha, he traced back contaminated karma to afflictive emotions, and afflictive emotions to ignorance, self-grasping ignorance. That is the root of suffering. Because of self-grasping, grasping at there's different levels of self-grasping, as we saw, but grasping at a permanent, unitary, independent self, or grasping at this kind of substantial and self-sufficient self, or grasping at the inherent self. These are 3 different levels. And the Buddhist philosophers, there's debate which is the most subtle and correct identification of ignorance. So from the Prasangika point of view, what's viewed as the highest philosophical school in Tibetan Buddhism, They say it's the grasping at an inherently existent self, which is the root of samsara. Because this root, because ignorance is adventitious, because ignorance is based on an incorrect mode of apprehending phenomena, because phenomena don't exist as they appear to the ignorant mind, as inherently existent, it can be removed by generating valid cognition, by generating wisdom, wisdom which sees the way reality actually exists. So if we illustrate this with, for example, with attachment, how attachment operates, this kind of clinging mind, the craving mind, the yearning mind, then it operates on the basis of seeing the object of our attachment as static, seeing it as pure, seeing it as happy in nature. And when we analyze a little bit, we see that it doesn't exist like that, like it appears to my clinging mind, to my attached mind. And by seeing that it doesn't exist as it appears, attachment decreases, diminishes. Same thing with anger. It operates by viewing somebody as inherently negative, inherently bad, as if it's not a dependent arising, if it's not contextual, and only seeing the negative aspect of that person based on that, and it's in relation to you also. Based on that, anger arises and the wish to destroy the object of anger. And when you just analyze a little bit, one doesn't have to be super smart to understand that anger doesn't have much ground in reality. You see, this person or this phenomenon I'm angry at, it is a dependent arising. And this will, and it's not an inherently existent negative. It's not negative for everybody. And I also created the causes to experience, the situation of this person and so on. And this diminishes anger. So by seeing the opposite mode of apprehension, the opposite mode of viewing a reality from the way that the afflictions view reality, they diminish. So the only way to destroy ignorance, we cannot do it by a hammer. And we cannot bomb ignorance either. It is because it's an internal thing. It is a mental energy. It can only be opposed by developing another mental energy, another mental factor. And that is wisdom. Then you see that, yes, Kitty?
Okay.
Yeah.
You mentioned renunciation.
Yeah.
Is it true to say that renunciation is actually detachment of the self? Detachment. Detachment. I'm trying to explain to myself what it means.
No.
No?
Oh, no.
So what is the meaning of renunciation? What is explanation?
Yeah, I tried to. What is the real meaning of renunciation? Renunciation means that you have a strong determination not to appropriate another set of 5 contaminated aggregates under the power of karma and afflictions. And that has to do, of course, with, with the self-grasping, because that is the root of that we do that. So it's a determination. You can also then describe it as a determination to realize the way things actually exist, the way the self actually exists. Detaching, I don't know, is not like the mental factor of non-attachment will be sort of helpful in your practice. And non-attachment also does not mean indifference, we need to say. Doesn't mean that you're indifferent to objects. But it's this yeah, the mind stops clinging, gluing onto objects. But this mental factor of non-attachment itself will not eliminate ignorance. You need to generate wisdom to see the opposite mode of apprehension. Non-attachment doesn't necessarily, will not necessarily see the opposite mode of apprehension of ignorance.
Because you actually renounce samsara as a whole. You want to be free of samsara.
Yeah.
Part of it is your attachment to the so-called I, which doesn't exist as we see, but in a different way. So in some parts,
yeah, you renounce attachment to the self. You renounce attachment to
yeah, but it's
everything.
only one aspect, exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you renounce suffering, and you renounce the causes of suffering, all the afflictive emotions. You renounce attachment, anger, pride, afflicted doubt, ignorance, wrong views, and all the more like secondary afflictions of, lack of,
Renounce.
sorry,
So renounce though is a decision,
yeah,
kind of, and then there's another level, which is to actually realize the decision.
yeah. You renounce, try to realize the wisdom realizing, you try to develop the wisdom realizing reality, because that is the ultimate antidote to the afflictions. And you don't feel pleased, you don't feel content, even if somebody, if you have everything that some samsaric being could wish for, still, because this is not happiness in nature, there will not be the attachment to it, will not be the will not be the excitement with it. As a bodhisattva, you would say, okay, this is useful. Okay, wealth is coming, or reputation is coming, or network of friends and so on. This is good, but you know that this is not like this is not happiness in nature. So you're using this in order to benefit others, but not for like a self-serving purpose. So it says, who said that? That only fools are happy with the stations that they have in this life. Yeah, that's the childish people thinking that now I'm the president, now I'm a rich businessman, now I'm super famous, and this, wow, everything is amazing. No, it's not. It's suffering in nature. It's so seeing that the causes are removable, you see that true cessation is possible. The third noble truth, that the nature of our they are unrealistic. They don't have the correct view of viewing. They don't have the correct way of viewing reality. They're not in accordance with reality, and therefore they can be removed. Everything which isn't based on truth can be removed. Anything that is based on truth cannot be removed. They're adventitious because they're not omnipresent. So we don't always have manifest detachment, anger, pride, and so on. If they were an essential part of our consciousness, they should be omnipresent. And they are adventitious because great yogis, the great mental scientists, they have seen it. They have seen them to be adventitious. So when it comes to many things like many other things like gravity or the size of the universe or evolution and so on that we cannot verify, we trust, because science is saying it, and you read about it and it makes sense, and you trust it. But then when it comes to nirvana, then it's difficult to say, okay, I trust it, even though these kind of die-hard practitioners of the past and of the present, they say, no, actually it exists. Truth of suffering also has 4 aspects. One is cessation, and that is the cessation, meaning that the afflictive emotions, they can be ceased. The mind can be completely separated from all afflictive emotions. Then pacification is that the one can completely separate from suffering. So these were counteracting certain views, which were saying that liberation is not possible. There's no such thing as permanent happiness. No, there is permanent happiness because afflictive emotions can be completely eliminated. That's why there's cessation. And then sublimity is the 3rd aspect, and it counteracts the idea that the nirvana, that there are states which are more sublime than nirvana, like such as contaminated concentration. You say, actually, this is a superior happiness to nirvana, or certain sensory pleasures. This must be, surely a good cup of coffee must be superior to nirvana or something like that. Having a celestial life, surely that must be superior to nirvana. And the Buddha said, no, it's not. Nirvana is the supreme happiness, especially the non-abiding nirvana of a Buddha. So he compared it to, I don't know how much time we have. No, don't have so much time.
10 minutes, no?
5 minutes, 10 minutes. Yeah. Anyway, there's one sutra. What's it called? No, I can't remember the name of the sutra, but there's this wandering sadhu. And in ancient India, they are still probably a lot of them. And in the Buddha's time, there were all these different wanderers from different sects, propounding different philosophies, different views of life. And there was this guy who can't remember his name now, but he said that the Buddha's teaching, it's is no good, because the Buddha is sort of denying, as living in sort of in denial, or denying himself pleasures, denying himself happiness, and denying others happiness as well, because happiness can be found by sensual pleasures, by being merry, by being like merry in the sense of happy, and by enjoying things. For this reason, he thought that the Buddha's teaching was, too pessimistic and leading the wrong way. And so he met the Buddha, and they were discussing, and the Buddha then said, well, before I went into the homeless life, I was living a pleasurable life in the palace, until I realized that these things are not bringing me it's not bringing me satisfaction, and are not only fleeting, but they're also dangerous, because they are captivating my mind with more and more attachments to samsaric pleasures, and that eventually I will die and separate from all these kind of pleasures. So he was trying to explain to this hedonist wanderer why that lifestyle doesn't bring lasting happiness, from his own personal experience. And then he explained that suppose Is that suppose somebody was suffering from leprosy, and he describes this, quite some detail, has lost his nose, has lost his tongue, etc. It's all these kind of open wounds festering with maggots, and who is staying close to a fire to burn his wounds, so that he will experience alleviation from suffering. He asks, is this real happiness? To the wanderer, he says, no, it's not, because this is not real happiness. Then he says, suppose a kind relative, a benefactor, a caring person, then takes this person to a doctor, and the doctor is able to heal the person from leprosy and the wound, and somebody then takes and the person experiences health and freedom and the satisfaction of having health. Suppose that somebody else, then two strong men, take this man to the fire again, and the man is wailing and is experiencing pain, etc., etc. Is it that the fire was only hot before? Is it only that the fire is hot and unpleasant right now? Or was it also hot and burning and unpleasant in the past? Was it harming the person's body also in the past? Yes, it did. It was hot, it was burning, and so on, in the past as well. And the Buddha explains that in the same way, now somebody who's attained nirvana, and me personally, I don't get jealous when I see people who are enjoying sensory pleasures, because for me, it is like watching a leper standing by a fire, trying to relieve their suffering. Whereas I have gained health, so there's no, I'm not jealous. But because the leper is experiencing a very serious disease, he experiences the fire as pleasant, as relieving. The moment when the leper doesn't have that disease, he experiences fire as unpleasant, as painful, as unbearable. In the same way, ordinary people, because they have craving, they experience sensory pleasures as desirable, as pleasant, as wonderful, and so on. But somebody who has eliminated craving, they don't have the same relationship to sensory pleasures.
But they can enjoy this sensory pleasure, knowing that they're not exaggerating them and understanding that they're impermanent, and just, momentarily saying, okay, now it's pleasant. That's the attitude, no? Like, it's not that they're not having any pleasure.
No.
Okay.
No, they're not. They have pleasure. Yeah, have pleasure, but they don't exaggerate the qualities of the object, and they know actually it's coming from inside. Pleasurable emotions are a ripening of positive karma. So it's not, you take what you need in order to survive, to have and so on, to survive, to sustain your body. And as the Bodhisattva, you take what you need in order to help beings. But the happiness is coming from inside. It's coming from the ripening of good karma. So even if you have lousy sensory pleasures, but you have a lot of good karma, you will experience it as something fantastic. Whereas if you have a wonderful sensory pleasures, but you have a lot of lousy karma, it will appear, not as not so great.
So you cannot live on the pleasure.
So you cannot
Living on the feel of pleasure.
No.
You can feel it, but you cannot relate the meaning.
Yeah, by leaning, what do you mean by leaning?
Having that as goal for pleasure. Like if I want to feel pleasure now, I can go and do ceramics. Or I can go and so the pleasure is from the inside and not the sensory act.
Yeah. So you can still engage like with sensory objects and activities and so on, but knowing that and that acts karmic imprint on your mental continuum from a virtuous action. So if you really want to create causes of happiness for the future, you do ceramic with a virtuous motivation, you know, for others. Or yeah, you make sure that every day, but you make sure that you're creating virtue, because this will be the substantial cause of happiness. And then other things that you meet will act as a cooperative condition, but they're not, they cannot, they don't necessitate pleasure. And that's why we get confused and disappointed, because we think that they should. You know, the things that are beautiful, the things that used to make me happy, etc. They should make me. Why aren't they not making me happy now? Well, they're not making you happy because all the causing conditions have not come together. There is the external condition, but the main is the internal one. And because the main is the internal one, because it's coming from virtue, as a Dharma practitioner, one makes effort in creating virtue. That becomes more important than sort of anything else. Yeah, you keep investing, sort of thing. Instead of just spending, you keep investing. And you keep investing with sort of the right, with a smart attitude, which is that I don't want to be happy only right now, today, here and now, but also tomorrow, in a week, but not only in this life, because and this life is very short, and because it can end at any time, whereas future lifetimes are infinite. It's smarter to invest for future lifetimes than to spend everything on this life. So this becomes like a renunciation. When you become less and less preoccupied with the excellences of this life, then already this is a sort of renunciation of this life. You start to invest for future lives. And then when you become less preoccupied with the excellences of samsara in general, when you start to think that a celestial rebirth or human rebirth with good conditions is actually also unsatisfactory, just as the low realms are unsatisfactory, you start to invest your merit for liberation. And and all of this is a gradual process, but then when you think that my own happiness, just thinking about my happiness, is actually as unsatisfactory, my liberation will be as unsatisfactory as revolving helplessly in samsara, because of having these close connections to sentient beings, you start to invest the merit in bodhicitta instead.
This is a kind of equanimity, what you described, in terms of how you relate your feelings within bed, if it's in the right track, in the right. Something to do with equanimity? Or get overexcited on one hand and not get over depressed on the other hand, and just understand where it comes from and what causes it. And
Sure. When you see that feelings, first of all, that they're impermanent, that they come and go, like without control, and that they're just the ripening results of some action in the past, and that something else will ripen in the future. We will have more equanimity with regard to our feelings instead of becoming attached to pleasant feeling and averse to unpleasant feeling, which is our normal tendency. We train to see the nature of feeling, and we generate even attitude, pleasure, pain, same taste. Not so much, not different. But if you only create virtue, you will only experience pleasure, whether you want it or not.
We're not angels.
No.
But in order to create virtue, you have to know how to create it, by the way. When Yasmin talked about, like, let's say, making a cup out of ceramic, right? In order to create virtue while doing it, because you have pleasure in that, right? But you want to create a virtue. So maybe you can dedicate what you create for the benefit of all beings, to enjoy, to use, to drink and stuff like that. And may they all experience the same happiness. That's a kind of virtue that you create while.
We could try to use our ordinary actions for creating actions which would normally be neutral. We can try to make them into virtue instead, like making use of our time. So yeah, when you do ceramics, you can do it with a motivation of doing it, for sentient beings, for others. You can contemplate interdependence of the ceramics, of making the ceramics. You can contemplate the impermanence of it and so on, and these are leaving some positive imprints and to continue. When we open doors, we can think we're opening doors of happiness for all sentient beings.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
Lama had this bodhicitta in day-to-day life, where he says how to use everything. When you open you put on the shower or the water, then you use your fantasy. I'm extinguishing the fires in the hell rooms, or I'm extinguishing the fires of afflictive emotions in the mind of all sentient beings. When you lay down and you fall asleep, you think, I'm actualizing the Dharmakaya state, the state of a Buddha. When you wake up, you think that I'm actualizing the Nirmanakaya state, the emanation body of a Buddha. When you go into a room, you think everybody that goes into this room, into this car, etc., may there never be everybody that goes into this room and this car and so on, that may their minds be pacified, may their afflictive emotions be pacified, may they never take a low rebirth. So we'll use our day-to-day experiences. But then doing formal practices as well, because normally our motivation, even when we're doing that, we're training our mind, our motivations is a bit weak. So when I think our formal practices becomes a little bit more stronger for creating virtues. So when we're actually practicing generosity, or we're actually refraining from harming others, we have the opportunity from harming others, but we refrain from it. Or when we're taking vows, then it's said that we are continuously producing the virtues, karma of ethics. Or when we feel anger coming up, but we're practicing patience. Or practices like prostrations, making offerings to the 3 jewels on the altar, reading Dharma texts with a positive motivation, contemplating them, meditating upon them. These are all sort of virtuous actions. More formal. It's a more formal Dharma practice than putting on the tap, let's say, or showering. If showering would always be, then we would never leave the shower. So, we finish here for lunch, and we have some. You'll have some group discussion, and after that, maybe we have some time to see the fourth noble truth as well. Lunchtime.
Group discussion is free, or will you give us subject?
And that minimizes suffering? Or I keep going back to
Yeah.
suffering.
Yep. Because you're not creating the causes of suffering. So as long as we're in samsara, then we will still experience suffering. Having the contaminated aggregates are in the nature of dukkha, and based on these aggregates, suffering, like the suffering of suffering, the one level that we really want to avoid, this arises naturally. Difficult to avoid completely. So we will still have headaches, tummy aches, and so on. And we might have much more harsh sufferings than that, based on karma that we have created in the past. But by taking this life and only creating causes of happiness in this life, you cannot escape suffering completely as long as you have contaminated aggregates. That's what one tries to realize in order to achieve, to generate the determination for liberation. One can create very comfortable situations within samsara. But unfortunately, this is too much the attitude, I think, of Buddhists, including myself.
Yeah.
It's creating the comfort within samsara, rather than trying to understand that samsaric existence is dissatisfactory by nature. If I want to experience a lasting, secure happiness, I need to liberate my mind from afflictive emotions, their seeds, and contaminated karma. Mainly the afflictive emotions. How? By training in the 3 higher trainings of ethics. That can be the ethics of avoiding the 10 non-virtuous actions. But as one progresses, it also involves like taking pratimoksha vows, like the 5 lay vows, or the monastic vows. And this is preparing you, because you're having a lifestyle which is less engaged with attachment and anger, the main disturbing emotions. The mind becomes more and more subdued just by ethics, by observing ethics. With a more subdued mind and more positive energy or merit, you will also be able to form, or form the mind as you want, like a skilled potter is able to form the clay. Once the clay has all the right conditions of water, earth, and whatever you need to mold clay. In the same way, when the mind is infused by ethics, when it's infused by love, when it's infused by compassion, then it becomes much more malleable, and you can start to shape it. And somebody who is determined to achieve liberation tries to shape it into single point of concentration. So one needs to learn the instructions for how to develop single point of concentration, and then train in that until you have achieved calm abiding. So then, you can train with François. A lot of habit, experience in teaching calm abiding. And based then on calm abiding, in the Buddhist context, one doesn't train in calm abiding for its own sake, as it is done, it seems, in certain Hindu traditions, where you just try to develop subtler and subtler levels of concentration. You develop calm abiding in order to combine it with special insight, and that is the wisdom. That is the 3rd higher training. Concentrate, ethics, concentration, wisdom. Wisdom, realizing the true mode of existence of phenomena, of yourself and of your aggregates, because this is the basis of self-grasping. And when you realize the true mode of existence of aggregates and the person, then afflictions are destroyed. They cannot operate anymore. They have no more fuel. And that's how you achieve a permanent state of happiness.
And that's through analytical meditation.
As a combination between a single point of concentration and analytical meditation. Because of that, at the time of death, there will be no more craving, because you know how you exist, and there is no fear of going out of existence either, and there will be no craving, and because there is no craving, the 12 links is another topic, but so karma cannot be activated at the time of death. There will be no projection to samsaric rebirth. And instead, according to the Sanskrit tradition, in the Pali tradition, they say consciousness is cut. So at the time of death, so for somebody who's achieved nirvana, consciousness is cut, so you stop existing, period. Whereas in the Sanskrit tradition, they say no, consciousness continues to exist, but there's no more stains. There's no more afflictions. So one takes rebirth in a pure realm, where there will be no more aging, sickness, death, etc.
Analogous to our paradise.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know what people do there, but they sit in, I think, in meditative equipoise, without rising from meditative equipoise. It just continuous blissful meditation until it is said, until a Buddha comes and wakes them up and says, "You have not accomplished all your goals. You still haven't achieved complete enlightenment. You still have work to do.
Go back.
Go back, go back."
For me, it's feel more humble. Think about it, because it's sometimes I see, when we think that we're born from, one-time life, then like saying whatever I achieved because I did it, because I. Then when I think about the universe and I know that it's not I, it's a long lineage of rebirth brought this moment into being.
Any other questions?
Yeah, before Paul said that karma does not manifest in this life. Is that true? Sorry.
No, not.
Sorry that I'm fact checking.
No, not that karma doesn't manifest. I mean, things you do, even good things you do in this life, doesn't necessarily mean that karma of those things you did in this life will ripen in this life. Actually, mostly it doesn't.
It can, but like Tal said, according to the teachings, it said mostly doesn't.
Yeah.
So
Sorry. Sorry to disappoint.
So then, okay,
but it,
damn,
but
I wanted you to be wrong. No, but we were talking about bodhicitta, or doing positive things, and if I know that basically I'm not going to get benefit in this lifetime, being just human, will I be motivated enough to do it? And then we talked about people who do good things for other reasons, like having their names on walls, on buildings, on, or for the, getting status in this life. And is that terrible if that motivates them to do good things, even though the intention is not pure?
It's still virtuous karma, and they will experience results of it.
Some of them maybe. because some of them, it's very virtuous, but still inside karma law, it's not exactly pure, intention. So it will result into something beneficial completely, or maybe with
It's still, yeah,
a few forms.
there's different views on this. Like, if you go hardcore, like Kadampa style Buddhism, and like Lama Zopa Rinpoche's version of explaining it, which goes back to the Kadampa masters and to Atisha and so on, is that virtuous karma that you create for this life, with the attachment to this life, based on the 8 worldly concerns, this is negative karma, actually. It will produce some happy results. It will produce some happy results, it seems, in this life, but it is non-virtuous karma.
For the future, yeah. For future.
Whereas virtuous actions that you are creating with an attitude for future lives doesn't mean that you have to think, oh, now I'm creating this for future lives in order to have wealth in future lives, but your mind is sort of fused with an attitude of taking this kind of, you're not expecting any results in this life. You're not clinging to results for yourself in this life. Then this is virtuous karma. It will bring a result in the future life, a happy result.
Even if it's for the benefit of a future life.
Yeah.
Which is still self-interested.
Even if it's self-centered, it's still virtuous karma.
Yeah, because you do it and you don't expect, if you don't expect the results to be here and now, and you still do things that are virtues, then it's like open-hearted, and it's more, I think, investing, not.
You get 25% more on each.
What I've learned is that don't expect anything.
Your future, right?
Expecting is wrong. Don't expect.
Renunciate of expecting.
Yeah, do it for other reasons, for other good reasons. Don't expect anything in return.
But it is expecting a return. Just in a further life.
Yeah.
It's still quite self-centered.
Yeah, and still it's considered to be virtuous karma. It's virtuous because it will produce happiness in future lifetimes. This is the demarcation. And but it's less self-centered than the attitude, I need to be happy now. Like also now. Me, it has to be now. Not tomorrow, not for tomorrow's Tenzin. I don't care about tomorrow's Tenzins. What happens to him, not my problem. If he goes hungry, if he doesn't have a shelter to live in, if he gets into trouble with the police, doesn't care. I'm gonna, have fun today.
If I may, sounds a little bit too tension, but why not make an idea of thinking that I do good, not for my own reincarnation in the future, but for the whole world's reincarnation in the future. Why would the concept be, I do it, karma is just for me?
Because we do it gradually. That is the best. That is the best. That's bodhicitta. When you're not doing it for you, when you're doing it for all sentient beings, that's the best. But the thing is that we understand that this is an ideal which might speak to our heart from time to time and move our heart. But in actuality, when we look at ourselves and how we tend to react, act, and want and not want, etc., it is about the self is very much in the center. So one is working towards the ideal while keeping an eye or keeping track of reality. But if one can act like that, with that attitude, then these great masters who train very much in bodhicitta, they say your own happiness comes by the way. By the way. You don't have to make any extra sort of efforts and so on. If you're motivated by bodhicitta, then I think everything works out. We try this less gradually to lessen our self-centeredness from the one that only thinks about me today to the one that thinks only about me in this life, to the one that thinks only about me in samsara, to the one that thinks only about my liberation, to the one that thinks about our enlightenment for the sake of all centeredness. It's a gradual diminishment of self-centeredness. Okay, we dedicate. No. May the precious view of emptiness not yet born arise. May that arisen not decline, but increase more and more. Samsara nirvana, like even an atom, inherent existence, and cause and effect independent arising on betraying. I seek a blessing to discern the meaning of Nagarjuna's thought, that these two are mutually complementary and not contradictory. We can skip that one. Incomparably kind and supreme Tenzin Gyatso, the wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, may you have a long life and all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. We can go to Lama Zopa Rinpoche's swift return prayer. Fearless teacher and assembly of the children of the victorious sons, Shravakas and Parateka Buddhas, victorious Losang, father and sons, along with the lineage masters, all the objects of refuge of infinite lands, please bestow the virgin goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now. Holding and spreading the Moni's precious and complete teachings, the explanation and practice, you are the armor of patience that is never discouraged, incomparably venerable Guru, to I make requests. By striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious son's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and for mother living beings who suddenly departed to peace by the great loss. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of the three jewels, and the great waves of bodhicitta of the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples. And then finally, we can think that may all beings that come into contact with us, that see us, that hear our voice, that sees a photo of us, says our name, touch us or touched by us, generate anger towards us or generate kindness towards us, may be protected from suffering and its causes, that it may purify negative karmas in their mind stream, and that they may be protected from diseases, from harm, from the elements, from sentient beings, from economic problems. That they may be protected from hunger, thirst, heat, cold. And that all their virtues, qualities, both external good qualities and internal good qualities may increase. So their health, their lifespan, their harmonious relationships, that they may increase, and that their good qualities of mind, of ethics, generosity, loving kindness, compassion, and renunciation and understanding of the Dharma, wisdom realizing ultimate reality, and bodhicitta, that these may increase in their mind stream too. And may all the qualified Mahayana masters in the world have long and healthy lives, and may there be no obstacles to their enlightened activities, and may their holy wishes, which are wishes for the welfare of sentient beings, be spontaneously fulfilled through the merits that we have created today. Wow.
Thank you very much.